Welcome everyone. The focus of this teacher's practice today is bakasana, okay, crow pose. Now, things immediately get a bit confusing because what is crow pose? You'll find actually different styles of yoga, and within styles, different teachers teaching almost fundamentally different things, but still calling them crow pose or crane or bakasana or variations of. So firstly, I want to differentiate between arms being straight or arms being bent. For the sake of today, let's just assume we're working with a bent arm version of the pose. Like, it is possible in crow variations to straighten the arms. Okay, that does require significant wrist flexibility. For some people, straightening the arms in crow actually ends up being easier because they often will lock out their joints, collapse the shoulders, and could almost be there all day. Like, the limiting factor is probably the fingers or the wrists. So I don't want you to see, regardless, as a straight arm version necessarily being harder. It might not be, okay, for many people. But that doesn't matter because today we're going to be focusing on a bent armed version of the pose. But then the question is, where are the arms bending? Now, some people, I'll do it head on so you can see a little bit better the first version. Some people do crow a little bit like this. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. I've put my inner legs on top of my elbows like a shelf. And to be honest, I could be here all day. Okay, I'm not using my inner leg muscles at all. My legs are essentially doing almost bakasana. So it requires some flexibility. And what I was doing then was putting bakasana onto an arm shelf. Now that does still require some strength in the arms, of course, and the upper body, but it didn't really require much core engagement or any real engagement through the inner legs, okay? It was essentially chaturanga, almost with bakasana on top. Now that version I just did, I wouldn't actually say it's dangerous or bad for you at all. It just, for me, doesn't maximize the benefit based on what I'm looking for. Now there's another version of the crow where you put your knee on the back of your arms. So this is quite a common one, and this certainly does make it easier. So let me do it from the side. So my knee is going on the back of my tricep, lean forwards, feet lift. Now I could be here again for quite a long time. Okay, another version of it, before I explain, is this. Knee actually on the elbow itself, hooking into part of the joint. So you're still requiring a little bit of arm strength there, but what you're really doing is stacking parts of your skeleton on other parts of your skeleton. Okay, you're not using any inner leg engagement. There's not a huge amount of core engagement. You're just stacking things on top of things. And stacking things on top of things tends to be quite easy. So as an entry point to putting weight in the hands, you could explore it. It's not a bad thing to explore, but I think you're missing out some of the benefits of what I perceive crow to be. Now, particularly if you're getting your knee on the back of the elbow itself and you're hooked in, it's even more of a disengaged pose because you are really locking out and stacking parts of the skeleton into other parts of the skeleton. And the limiting factor again is probably just wrists and fingers. Okay. What you'll also notice with that kind of crow, where the knees are on the elbows or just stacked on the arms, people tend to have the bum really high in the air like this. Okay, it's almost like they're going to be going into some kind of headstand or handstand. Okay. Let me just speak to that for a second. I know I'm going all over the place to some degree, but you could, in theory, transition from crow to headstand, then back to crow again. Now, it does look cool, it does look interesting. Okay, it does require some skill and strength. My only issue with it is that most people really, when they come into a headstand, should really think about placement. And when they drop from crow into headstand, almost certainly their neck isn't in an optimal position, nor their hands. Okay, so can they go upside down? Yes. Are they in the optimal position to go upside down? Not really, probably. Do we want the optimal position? Yeah, because your neck isn't really designed to support body weight. And if we are going to put all of our body weight pretty much in our neck, especially in a tripod style of headstand, we should be really thinking about placement and mindfully coming into it. But anyway, we're not talking about headstand today, we're talking about bakasana. Now, I'm going to offer you another version of this pose. Now, that is where your knees are actually squeezing against the upper arm. So let me demo. I've got my knees as high as possible up the arms. Notice how close my bum is to my knee. I want this to be a relatively compact pose. As I come into it, I lean forward slightly. My knees start to touch the outer arms. Then I push forwards and I'm there. Now, I could not be here for that long. Now, what's happening there is my knees are trying to squeeze together. They're not going to touch because my arms are in the way, but they're actively squeezing against the edge of the tricep. My bum is trying to stay low. My chest is trying to lift up. And my feet are pulling towards my bum as much as my bum is pulling towards my feet. Now, that became a pretty hard pose, and I couldn't have been there for that long. That is where I believe you will get the maximum benefit. And so that is the direction of travel today, that version of crow. So it's not the only version of crow. Other people would do other different things. I'm not saying that what they're doing is not legitimate, but we're focusing on this today, okay? We're going to start lying on our back.